You know, I read a book not too long ago by a woman named Bronnie Ware down in Australia called The Top 5 Regrets of the Dying. And she was a hospice nurse who worked with the dying people and talked to them. And the number one regret that people had, people who were dying, who knew that they were crossing over and making their transition, the top regret was, I wish I'd have had the courage to live the life that I knew I was destined to live. In other words, that I had a purpose, that I knew that there was something greater that I came here to do, that I signed up for something other than just to fit in and to go along and to follow somebody else's rules. And most of us are not, don't allow ourselves the freedom to listen to those internal callings, those things that we all feel are just so important to us. I can give you two examples of the two most significant moments in my life that I can think of, other than the birth of my children and all those wonderful things that took place. But I went to my father's grave in 1974, a man that I just hated. I was filled with rage and antipathy and anger towards. And I was called to go there at the age of 34. And I went there because I was just angry. I wanted to make a connection. I just couldn't believe that this man, he'd been dead for 10 years and I had just found out. And I stood on his grave for the longest time just cursing and being angry. And I went back to my car. It was down in Biloxi, Mississippi. And I got into the rental car to drive back to New Orleans, and then I was going to fly back up to New York because I was a professor at St. John's University in New York City. I've been thinking about wanting to write and all of that, but nothing was going right for me at that time. I was out of shape, things weren't working well, I was drinking, I had been doing drugs, I was in a bad relationship. My whole life was just not on the kind of path that it is on today. And I got back in the car to go, and I felt I'd finally done that, and I had a calling. I was called back by some invisible intelligence, some burning desire, something that we call light, something that we call the impersonal part of us that is always directing us, and it's always directing you as well. You're listening to it sometimes. Most of the time we ignore it in the name of fitting in or doing what I don't have time, or I'm too old, or I'm too fat, or I'm too skinny, or I'm too white, or I'm too black, or I'm too poor, and endless we go with all of the reasons why we can't fulfill a destiny that we know is ours, that we signed up for, that we're here for in this infinite universe, that who we are is not this physical body that we're in that is here for a moment and gone. Who we are is this infinite intelligence, and we forget that. The same intelligence that created this infinite universe that never ends is you. You manifested in this infinite, divine, organizing intelligence. You're a part of all of it. And I got a calling, and the calling for somehow said, go back. You're not complete. That's not why you were sent here. That's not why I wanted you to go to your father's grave. I went back. Something came over me at the age of 34. I have no idea what it was. I do know now that it was light, it was God, it was that divine intelligence, whatever you call it. What I said at that gravesite, from this moment on, as I send you love, I send you kindness. Who am I to judge you? Who am I to condemn you? Who am I to be critical of you? I don't even know what you were living through and why you had to do what you did. I send you love from now on. I'd never had another bad dream about him. I was never angry about him. But the most intriguing thing happened is that my life made an entire shift. A shift that all of us can make at any moment. We never know. These callings are so strong, and yet they're always there. After I left Biloxi, that I flew up to New York, flew down to Fort Lauderdale. I had 2 weeks. I checked into a motel on A1A, the Spindrift Motel, and I wrote for 14 days. And I wrote a book called Your Erroneous Zones, which became one of the largest selling books in history. And it propelled my life in a whole new way. I stopped drinking. I started getting exercising more. My relationships all changed. The divine person that I was to meet showed up. My children showed up. Everything changed and shifted because I was willing to listen to that inner voice, that light that said, go back. Another time, just a few years later, it was 1976, I was driving on the Long Island Expressway from where I lived in Huntington, New York, into the city. I was about to receive tenure, which at that time I was 36 years old. I had written 3 textbooks. I was a star there as far as they were concerned. I was going to begin, to live a life in which I was going to be a professor for the rest of my life. Tenure, guaranteed employment for the rest of my life, something that everybody at the university longs for. I was ready for it. And I pulled off the Long Island Expressway as I was contemplating that. And I sat on the side of the shoulder there for about a half an hour, just watching the cars go by, wondering and asking myself, do I really want to get tenure and stay here and do what I've been doing? I've already done this. I know how to do it. Am I going to be in the same office doing the same thing? Am I going to live 90 years, or am I going to live 1 year 90 times over and over again? And I decided that I just couldn't do it. And I just felt, this amazing moment came over of freedom. It was like it just was lifted off to me. And I got back on the freeway, got off at the exit at Grand Central and Utopia Parkway, parked my car right outside Marillac Hall, went up to the second floor, went into the dean's office, Dean Sarah Fassenmeyer, and I told her, I've written this book, and it's now just been published. It's called Your Erroneous Zones, that I wrote also as a result of another calling. And I said, I've got to take it out to the world. I've got to talk about it. I appreciate the fact that I could work here for the rest of my life, but it's just not something that I can do. And she tried to get me to dissuade me from such a thing. These kinds of callings, we all have these. We know that we have a purpose. You already know that you have a purpose. You know, you're listening to that all the time. It's there. The idea that you can't do it or that you shouldn't do it or that my whole life has been impacted by listening and being willing to understand that. And there's a quote that I talk about at the seminar that'll be a part of this course and it goes like this. It's from William Blake. He said, if the doors of perception were cleansed, everything would appear to man as it is, infinite. For man has closed himself up till he sees all things through narrow chinks of his cavern, by William Blake. We would begin to see, I don't know if you've ever heard of a group called The Doors, by Jim Morrison, a rock group. They took the name from from that essay that Aldous Huxley wrote called The Doors of Perception. There are things that are known, and there are things that are unknown. And in between are the doors. And even Jesus said, I am the door. That is, the internal I amness within God is the door that you can open and discover so many new things. And another one of the principles that I talk about is this, that a lot of people have difficulty understanding. It says the laws of the material world do not apply in the presence of the God realized. I was on the Tonight Show in Australia a few years back, and the woman asked me the question, what is your purpose? What are you here for? What do you want to do? And I said, I'd like to understand God realization. I'd like to be able to understand and live from that place where God is within me and I know it. And in this course, we've created 4 meditations. The importance of meditation, I can't stress it enough. You have to go to the silence. You have to go to the place within that can't be divided. Think about it. Silence is the only place where you can go that you can't divide it. You cut it up and you still got more silence and more silence. And it is in that silence, in that meditation. And I deliver some really very, very powerful meditations with some readings that when you understand them, you'll understand that the laws of the material world do not apply in the presence of the God realized. Once you're in that state of God realization, you'll understand things like your intuition. That is that inner calling that says, go this way instead of that way. Try this. Don't be afraid of that. Get rid of the fears that are so dominating your life. As Anita talks about fear and what a thing it was that created the cancer in her life, which allowed her to almost come to a place of dying. You'll discover things like synchronicity, that you have a thought and all of a sudden what you place your attention on begins to manifest and arrive into your life. You'll discover that those thoughts are not just things that are happenstance. There's no happenstance in this entire universe. It's all held together by a divine light. And one of my favorite readings I'd like to share with you is from the life and teachings of the masters of the Far East. It said, it has been clearly stated that life lived by the average individual is hypnotic. That is, the majority of men and women are not living life as it was intended at all. Not 1 in a million feels the freedom to live what he inwardly feels he should live. He has come under the world's opinion of himself, and this opinion is what he obeys rather than the laws of his own being. In this respect, and to this degree, he is living under an hypnotic spell. It's like hypnosis. He lives under the delusion that he is a mere human being living in a merely material world and only hopes to escape it when he dies and goes to what he calls heaven. This is not the determination intended in the plan and purpose of life. Obedience to one's inner nature, the expression of life as he instinctively feels it ought to be expressed, is the very foundation of the life which the masters reveal as the only true mode of living. That is very powerful awareness, that you are not this body that you're in, this body that comes and goes. You are the invisible divine intelligence within, the same intelligence that allows a clay pot to exist. And finally, from the Masters of the Far East, the second volume, the moment you become free from the belief that you are mere human beings, subject to human laws of life and death and the limitations which human beings have imposed, that moment you will see that you are free from all human limitations and may become sons of God, if you will. The moment you realize that you are divine, that you are free from all limitations and possessed of the strength of divinity, and you know that this divinity is the place where being comes most directly in contact with God, man is then beginning to see and know that this divinity is not something to be injected into each other from without. He is beginning to know that it is the very life of each and every person, your essence, the light within you. This is what this course is about. This is a course that we go deeply in depth in, and the reason that I put the course together in the first place is because I have heard nothing but positive, enlightening comments from people who say, it turned my life around. I finally went within and discovered that I am capable of using this divine intelligence that we call light inside of us to create the life that I was destined to live. I hear it over and over again every time we do it. We do it in an entire weekend seminars. Anita and I have done this entire seminar in Portland. We did it in Maui, and we're doing it all over the world. But look, I would like to be able to go everywhere. I'd like to go to every country in the world. I'd like to go to every city in the world and present this. It's just not possible. That's the beauty of the internet. That's one of the things that we can do. We can put this course online and give you an opportunity to be in that seminar yourself. This is what we're offering. I hope you enjoy it. I'm sure that you will. I am light.
Everything. One of them is unnecessary. So it isn't about getting somebody who's just like you. In fact, your soulmate is the person that you have a lot of difficulty with. Your soulmate's the person you can't get rid of. They just keep showing up. You say this, they say that, and there they are, they're back again. And they never go away. They keep showing up in your life. And everybody has these people. These are our greatest teachers, because anybody in your life who can push a button and send you into a frenzy is the person who's your greatest teacher. You know why? Because they teach you that you haven't mastered yourself at this moment. You don't know how to choose peace. In A Course in Miracles, there's a wonderful line that says, I can choose peace rather than this. Whatever it is, I can choose peace. My soulmate, my wife, is one of my soulmates. I mean, she knows how to push those buttons. She's really good at it. And she's one of my greatest teachers. I remember saying to her one time, honey, do you love me for who I am or for what I've been able to do for you? I just want to, she said, that you call yourself a spiritual person? I can't believe you would even ask a question like that. She said, I don't love you for what you can buy for me or what success that you've had or where you are on any bestseller list. I love you for who you are. And I will always love you. I said, well, I was just asking. I said, what if I was just Joe Sixpack? You know, and I was just bringing home, you know, a meager salary and so on. She said, I will always love you for who you are. She said, I would miss you. But I would always love you. She knows. She's got that. You know? And all of us have soulmates. My daughter Serena, who's just turned 13, my teeny bopper. She came home from school one day. She said, there's a rumor in our school. She saw somebody had seen me on television that you actually wrote a book about how to raise children. Tell me it isn't true. I said, honey, you can come and hear me speak. Would you like to come and hear me speak? I said, people actually pay to hear me speak. She said, Why? I mean, she's got that, all right? But her soulmate is her sister Summer, who is now almost 15. But when Serena was 12 and Summer was 14, my wife was away working on a book of hers, and I was taking care of everything at home while she was working on her book about a spiritual approach to childbirth and infancy care. And she's as qualified as anybody to write about that, I can tell you. And I was making breakfast. I was making waffles for them in the morning at the toaster. And she mixes all this stuff up. It's a lot easier to just put them in. And Summer and Serena were sitting at the back table in the kitchen. And I heard Summer say to Serena, out of nowhere, about 6:30 in the morning, if you didn't have any feet, would you wear shoes? And I turned around, I said, where is this going? And Serena went, that's ridiculous. What do you mean if I didn't have any feet, would I wear shoes? She said, of course not. And Summer said to her, then why are you wearing that bra? Everybody's got a soulmate. Stormed out of the room, and it was all... But it isn't the people who agree with us, it isn't the people who tell us the right thing, it isn't the people who always find us, you know, just perfectly smelling good and so on. There is an element of understanding that everybody who shows up in our life has something to teach us. Many people have said to me that they have observed in my writing and in my teaching over the years that I have changed. I've evolved, if you will. That when I first wrote Erroneous Zones and Pulling Your Own Strings and books like this, that I was really talking about something much different than I'm talking about today, which is spirituality, higher awareness, higher consciousness, and it's true. Because one of the great teachers, again, in my life was Carl Jung. And in Modern Man in Search of a Soul, he said that there are archetypes, there are stages that we go through when we reach adulthood. He said those stages work like this. He said it starts out with the athlete when you reach adulthood. And he called it the athlete, not as a put down of athletes, but as the time in our adult life when our primary emphasis is on our body. What it can do, how strong it is, how fast it can run, how much it can lift, how beautiful it is, and so on. And we believe that we are a body, if you will, perhaps with a soul. He said the second stage is what he called the stage of the warrior. And this is the time in our adult life when we take ourselves out of our physical self, if you will, and we take this body out into the world, and we do what warriors do, which we attempt to conquer, we attempt to defeat, we attempt to get as much as we can. It's the age of the ego. It's the time when we're saying, what are my quotas? What's in it for me? What can I get? And we go through that stage. And I believe that I was writing earlier in my life to teach people how to be better athletes and better warriors, because that's where I was in my life in those days. And the shift has taken place for me as well. Jung said that the third archetype is what he called the archetype of the statesman or the stateswoman. And this is when we finally get to a place in our adult life when we stop saying, what's in it for me? How much can I get? How much can I accumulate? And we begin to ask the question, how may I serve? What are your quotas? And serving others becomes much more important than our own egos, until ultimately we reach what he called the stage of the spirit, the archetype of the spirit, when we finally begin to recognize that this is not our home. What it means in the holy books when it says you are in this world, but you are not of this world. And these four stages represent also where we can look at our own self. How am I doing going through these? To what extent do I find myself consumed with my own quotas? What's in it for me? How much can I get? And ask ourselves that question as we begin to interact and deal with other people. Being able to manifest, being able to attract into our lives what it is that we'd like to attract into our lives boils down to a formula that I'd like to share with you here this evening. And this formula is one that everyone that I know who is able to get things into their life practices this. I call it the 4 reallys. All right? So that what you really, 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 really want, you will get. And these 4 reallys each of them stands for something. And if you look at people who are good at, some people call them lucky, some people call them highly spiritual, whatever it might be, but they are good at getting what they want in their lives. And here are the four reallys. The first one says, I wish. So what you really wish for, everything that you'd like to get into your life starts with a wish. It's a thought. I wish I could get that job. I wish I could get that promotion. I wish I could lose weight. I wish I could get rid of that addiction that I have. I wish I could, whatever. It's a wish. So what you have to start with a wish. The second really stands for what you desire. What you really wish and desire. And the difference between what you wish for and desire is in what I call asking. Ask and you shall receive. Ask and you shall receive. It's not empty words. Be willing to ask. When I get stuck sometimes writing and I'm just not quite sure where to go or whatever, I just leave the typewriter or I leave the yellow pad that I'm writing on. I walk over to the couch and I get into a meditation and I say, I would like some help in having this become clearer as to how to express it. And it's always there. Sometimes the phone will ring. And my wife will call and she'll say, did you know that this was in the mail? And I'll say, read it to me, and it'll be exactly what I needed. Sometimes it just comes in the thing that I call an intuition or an insight, whatever it might be. The third really stands for what I intend. So now you shift away from what I wish for and ask for, and you frame it in such a way that you intend to create it. I intend to create this, whatever it might be, whether it's a healing, whether it's a losing of weight, whether it's getting rid of an addiction, whether it's creating prosperity. I intend to create it. And if you notice people who are good at manifesting, they don't mince those kinds of words. I will do it. And someone will say, well, what if it doesn't work out? You say, well, then I'll just learn whatever I have to learn from it not working out. But I intend to create this in my life. There's an intention, and the intention is so powerful that you become independent of the good opinion of other people. You're not checking it out with the tribe. You're not checking it out with what everybody else out there said you should do or shouldn't do. You're saying to yourself, I intend to create it. And I often tell people, don't tell anybody else about what you want to manifest. Don't make it a big statement. Instead, keep it to yourself. And they say, why do you want to say that? I say, because the minute that you do, you invoke ego. And in quantum physics, there's a simple line. It says, particles themselves are not responsible for their own creation. Another way of saying that is the way St. Paul said it. That which is seen, he said, hath not come from that which doth appear. That is, the source of everything over here, it's not over here. It's in this invisibleness. And once you invoke ego, you have to defend it, you have to explain it, you have to get the tribe involved in it, and before long, you've lost the capacity to manifest. It's a spiritual journey. Inspiration, in spirit. When you're inspired, in spirit. The fourth really stands for passion. Passion. That is, I am absolutely passionate about it, and I intend to create it with that love. One of the great books that one of my teachers sent to me from ancient India, written like 3,000 years ago, has a line in it that says, to attempt to manifest what you want without passion is like dressing up a corpse. So you take this corpse, and you put a tuxedo on it, and you dress it all up, and you put all the makeup on it, and you take it out into the world, and you say, now see what you can get for me. But basically it's dead inside. And if it's dead inside, that is, if it lacks passion, if you lack passion, you're not going to be able to attract it into your life. So what you wish for, ask for, intend to create, and have passion about, you'll get. You'll get it. That's the good news. The bad news is that what you really, 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 really don't want, you will also get. And this is one of the most difficult things for people to understand. And when you're dealing with the tribe and you're dealing with what is and what everybody else tells you is impossible, and somebody might be watching this and say, well, that's just a lot of nonsense. I mean, you can't just put your attention on something, think about it, and have it come true. It involves a whole lot of other stuff like that. You see, here's how it works. You cannot attract thin from I hate being fat. Because if what you think about is what expands, and what you're thinking about is hating being fat, then hating being fat is what you will continue to manifest. You act upon what you think about. You cannot attract prosperity from an inner consciousness that says, I hate being poor, I despise being poor. Because if you despise being poor, if you're angry about being poor, then being angry about being poor or despising it is what you will continue to act upon, and you'll be able to say, see? Now it gets worse. You cannot manifest what you want if your attention is on what is. If your attention is on what is and the circumstances of your life, that's where your thoughts are, then you will continue to create what is into your life. You've got to figure out a way to get your mental images, your energy, your attention, your higher awareness off of what is and onto what you want. And every time your thoughts are on what is, you shift it to what do I want? And it's even worse than that. You cannot manifest what you want if your attention is on what always has been. This is the way things are. You'll hear people say it to you all the time. These are the circumstances of life. Don't you understand? This is reality. Wake up. These are the way things have always been. There's always been poor people. You're one of them. That's just the way it is. And you watch that person, and being poor continues to manifest into their life. If you keep your attention on what always has been, then what always has been is what you'll continue to manifest. As you think, so shall you be. These aren't empty words, folks. This is reality. And the worst and ugliest of all is this. You cannot manifest what you want into your life, no matter what it is, if your attention is on what they want for you, or what they expect for you, or what they tell you are your limitations, or what you can do. Because if your thoughts are on what they want, you cannot put your attention on what you want. What they want will continue to manifest. And you might be in a tribe that always turns left. And all you want to do is make a right turn. And you go to all the tribal elders and you say, look, I just want to make one right turn. And they say, wait a minute. In our tribe, we only turn left. We've always turned left. That's the way this tribe has always been. And so they will have an emergency meeting. And they will convene all of the elders to get you to come to your senses